Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going back to the Mughal Empire.
Ooh, fun.
It is fun. We're focusing on Emperor Jahangir.
Okay.
He ruled from 1605 to 1627, so he's right there between Akbar and Shah Jahan,
Right in the middle.
right in the middle.
Exactly.
And we've got some cool sources today about Mughal architecture, Indian history. And get this, even a little snippet from a podcast episode about a totally different historical period.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But like always, our focus is on Jahangir.
Right.
His passion for art and his pursuit of justice. Plus, we'll look at some of those personal and political issues he had to deal with.
Sounds good. Let's jump in.
All right, so Jahangir, this guy was an art enthusiast.
Yeah, he really was, especially when it came to painting.
Oh, yeah.
He actually considered himself like a connoisseur.
Yeah.
Almost like if you think about like a modern day art collector.
I see.
So not only did he love art, but he commissioned artwork. It was like he was trying to surround himself with beauty.
That's interesting. And his architectural style wasn't really like his dad's, was it?
Not really. Akbar's style, is known for being really robust and strong.
Right.
But Jahangir was all about elegance and, as we said, beauty.
Yeah.
He was kind of like ushering in a new era.
Yeah.
For Mughal aesthetics.
That makes sense. The sources mentioned the gardens he commissioned, like the Shalimar and Nur Manzil gardens.
Those are really great examples. You can think of these gardens not just as like empty spaces with grass and plants. They were like living artworks.
Wow. So we're seeing this very artistic side to Jahangir.
Yeah.
But he also was really concerned about justice.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The sources talk about his chain of justice. Did you read about that?
I did.
It was a golden chain, literally a chain made of gold.
Wow.
It connected his palace to this big bell.
Interesting.
Anyone could ring it if they needed help.
Huh. And this wasn't just for show, right?
Right. It wasn't symbolic. There are stories about Jahangir listening to cases himself and giving his judgments.
Wow. That's pretty hands-on for an emperor.
I know, right? So he cared about more than just art and beauty. He cared about his people, too.
That's a good point. It really shows a different side to him. But every ruler has their challenges, right?
Absolutely. Like the rebellions he had to face.
Yeah. That must have been tough.
One of the most well-known ones was led by his own son, Prince Khusro.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's got to be hard.
Yeah. Not just a political challenge, but also a very personal one.
Definitely. And then, of course, there are Jahangir's personal struggles.
Oh, yeah. We can't forget about those. The sources talk about his possible opium addiction.
It's like we're getting this look into the human side of him.
Right, like the man behind all the power in art.
Exactly. It shows that even powerful people in history dealt with their own stuff.
Yeah, just like us.
Makes you wonder how all that affected his reign.
It makes you think, how did he balance his personal challenges with ruling an empire?
Good question.
Yeah. To really understand it, we have to dig deeper into those personal issues.
Okay.
But also look at how those issues might have affected his rule. And the Mughal Empire as a whole, it's like he was constantly trying to find balance when everything around him was chaotic.
So we're getting a pretty complex picture of this emperor.
Yeah.
An art lover who wanted justice but also had his own issues.
Right. It sounds like he had a lot to deal with.
He did?
Yeah, it was almost like he was trying to hold on to that idea of justice and order, while his own world was maybe a bit messy.
Yeah, that focus on justice with that whole chain of justice thing, it really does stand out.
Yeah.
It wasn't just symbolic either. He actually was involved in that whole process.
I know, it's crazy, right? Like, imagine being a normal person. You can just ring a bell and the emperor might hear your case.
Wow.
That's a pretty amazing level of access for an emperor in those times, don't you think? It kind of makes you wonder if maybe he was trying to, balance out some of the craziness in his own life. Like maybe if he created a sense of order in the empire, it would somehow bring him some peace.
Oh, that's interesting. So we're seeing this connection between his personal struggles and the way he ruled. But do you think there were any downsides to being so hands-on with justice?
That's a really good question. And it brings up some interesting points because, on the one hand, it might have made him seem like a good ruler, accessible to his people.
Right.
But on the other hand, the nobles, the powerful people, they might not have been so happy about it.
Yeah, I can see
They
that.
might have thought he was overstepping his boundaries.
Right.
Maybe even threatening their own power.
So it's like this double-edged sword.
Exactly.
He's trying to be fair and protect people.
Yeah.
But then he's potentially creating tension with the elite. And that maybe even leads to some of the instability during his reign.
You got it. It's those little nuances, that make history so interesting. It's not always black and white, good or bad. You have to look at all these complex situations and all the consequences to really get the whole picture.
It's true. It's like we're trying to solve a puzzle.
Right.
And speaking of puzzle pieces, we have to talk about those rebellions, especially the one led by his son, Prince Khusrau. Talk about family drama.
Oh, man, I know, right? That must have been devastating for Jahangir.
Yeah.
On a personal level and a political level, imagine your own son challenging your authority. That's rough.
Yeah.
That kind of challenge when it comes from inside your family, it can really shake things up. It would have been a blow to his pride, his authority. And honestly, it probably made his enemies think, hey, maybe we can challenge him too.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if maybe his own personal struggles played a role in those rebellions.
Right?
Like, did his weaknesses make other people think they could take advantage of the situation?
It's definitely something to think about. And it's at this point, with all this political and personal turmoil that his potential opium addiction becomes even more important.
Really humanizes him, doesn't it?
Totally. It's like even with all the power and all the fancy stuff, he was still a man dealing with his own problems.
Absolutely. It reminds us that these historical figures were real people just like us.
Exactly.
They had strengths and weaknesses just like everyone else.
And, understanding their weaknesses, their flaws, it helps us see the complexity of their decisions and their actions.
So we're starting to get a more balanced view of this emperor.
Yeah.
Not just the glorious emperor you see in paintings.
It's all about those strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
That's what makes him so interesting. It's like he's trying to navigate this crazy world, trying to balance what he wants with what it takes to rule an empire.
It's a lot to juggle.
And that brings us to the question of legacy.
Yeah.
Where does Jahangir fit in with the whole Mughal dynasty?
It's easy to see him as just a bridge between Akbar and Shah Jahan. But maybe there's more to it than that.
I think so too. His reign might not have been as groundbreaking as his dad's or as grand as his son's, but it was still really important.
Right.
It laid the groundwork for what was to come.
Like a time in transition.
Right.
Artistic tastes were changing, and he was trying to balance his personal life with, the responsibilities of ruling.
Yeah. And when you look at it like that, his reign is kind of a microcosm of the Mughal Empire itself, a story about art and power and justice and just how complex people are.
Okay, but we can't forget about the architecture. We've talked about Jahangir's love of art and gardens, but how does that compare to his successors, especially Shah Jahan, the emperor who built the Taj Mahal?
That's a great point. It's almost like Shah Jahan took his dad's love of elegance and just went all out with it.
Yeah. I mean, think about the Taj Mahal.
I know. Yeah.
All that intricate marble work, the huge gardens, the sheer scale of it. It's like he took Jahangir's elegance and added a whole other level of luxury and grandeur.
And it wasn't just the big projects either. You can see Shah Jahan's influence in buildings that were commissioned by nobles.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like Bir Singh Deo's palace at Datia or the Jahangiri Mahal at Orcha. These were built by Hindu rulers. But they still have those distinct Mughal touches. It just shows how influential Shah Jahan's architectural style really was.
It's like the Mughal style was becoming a language. Everyone understood it. It went beyond religion and social class.
Yeah.
It was like Shah Jahan was creating this visual legacy for the entire empire.
Exactly. And it's so cool to see how powerful architectural styles can be. But I can't help but wonder, did Jahangir's artistic vision play a role in shaping Shah Jahan's ambitions? Like, did growing up surrounded by those fancy gardens and pavilions inspire him?
Oh, that's an interesting thought. It's like we're seeing this artistic inheritance.
Yeah.
The father's love of beauty and elegance influences the son's architectural vision.
It really shows how connected history is.
Yeah.
How what one generation does can affect the next. It's like this chain reaction of inspiration. But it doesn't end with Shah Jahan, does it? The Mughals kept building after him.
Right.
Later Mughal emperors, even Aurangzeb, who was known for being pretty austere, they all added their own personal touches, like the Badshahi Mosque in Lahore. It's a great example of how the Mughal style continued to evolve.
So even though the empire declined, their architecture lived on. It's like their buildings became this lasting legacy that shaped India for centuries.
It really makes you realize that history isn't just about names and dates.
Yeah.
It's about how ideas and styles and traditions can stick around long after empires are gone.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. We've seen Jahangir as this art enthusiast who loved justice, but also fought with his own demons.
We have.
We've talked about his architectural legacy and how it impacted his successors.
And I think we've also shown how important it is to look beyond the surface, to understand all the complexities and contradictions that make up a person.
Exactly. But as always, every deep dive leaves us with new questions, like how did Jahangir's hands-on approach to justice actually affect his reign?
Right.
Was it a good thing, or did it make things harder for him?
And how much did his personal struggles affect his decisions as emperor? It's like we've opened up this whole new set of mysteries.
I guess that's the fun part about studying history.
Yeah.
It's a never-ending adventure of discovery.
It really is. And for you, our listener, we encourage you to keep exploring.
Yeah.
Dive into the sources, dig deeper into those questions, and see what you think about Jahangir's legacy.
Because at the end of the day, history isn't just about learning facts.
Right.
It's about understanding what shaped our world, the forces, the people, the choices they made. One emperor and so many questions. It really makes you think about history, It's not just about dates and names.
Yeah, it's about real people with real problems.
And Jahangir's struggles, they were all tied up with his passions and beliefs.
That's true. He wasn't just into art.
Right.
He really cared about justice.
And his people.
Yeah, but he was also fighting his own battles.
That's what makes him so interesting to me.
Yeah.
That mix of good and bad. It makes you think about how all that personal stuff might have affected his decisions as an emperor.
Uh-huh.
Like maybe that focus on justice. Was it a way to make things feel more orderly for him?
That's a really interesting thought. It's like he was trying to find some balance within himself and within his empire.
Right.
It reminds us that even the most powerful people, they're human.
Yeah.
They go through things, they have weaknesses.
It's important to remember that when we're studying history, we can't just look at the big achievements and the famous stuff.
No.
We have to look at their personal lives too, their struggles, what they believed in, to really understand them and the impact they had.
And speaking of impact, it's interesting to think about how Jahangir's legacy lived on even after he was gone. We talked about his influence on Shah Jahan's architecture. But what about the bigger picture? Did his ideas about art and justice change the Mughal Empire in the long run?
Those are good questions.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, what about us? What kind of impact are we having on the world? What will future historians say about our time, our leaders?
Well, maybe they'll see us as this generation dealing with all this technology, climate change, political stuff. Maybe they'll focus on the people who tried to make a difference, The inventors, the activists, everyday people fighting for change.
It reminds us that we're all part of this big story, this human story that's been going on for centuries.
Yeah.
We each play a part in what happens next. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I want to go back to something we mentioned earlier.
Okay.
That connection between Jahangir's love for art and his pursuit of justice.
Ah, yes. It's easy to see them as two separate things. But maybe they were connected? Maybe he thought of both art and justice as ways to express beauty and harmony. And that both of those things were necessary for a strong empire.
That's a really cool way to look at it. He was trying to make a world that was beautiful, not just to look at, but also morally and socially.
Exactly. It makes you think about how different parts of life are all connected. Our values, our beliefs, they affect what we do.
And what we do affects the world.
It all comes full circle. And that makes me think about another connection.
What's that?
The influence of ideas on Mughal architecture. We've talked about style,
Uh-huh.
but what about philosophy and religion?
Now that you mention it, I did read something about the idea of paradise in Islam
Yes.
and how that influenced the way they designed gardens.
Exactly. Those gardens weren't just supposed to be pretty. They were supposed to make you think about God, to create a kind of earthly paradise.
Wow, so they were designed to transport people.
To a higher place.
It adds a whole new meaning to those gardens.
It does. It's like we're seeing them not just as art, but as expressions of faith.
So, to our listener, we encourage you to keep learning. Explore the ideas that shaped Jahangir's time in the Mughal Empire. Look into the philosophy and the religion behind their art and architecture.
Because when you understand those things, you can really appreciate how complex human history is and how powerful ideas can be.
It's true.
What?
I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. It's been a journey.
It has. We've learned a lot about Jahangir.
He was a ruler with many sides, a passion for art, a commitment to justice, and his own personal challenges.
And in exploring all that, we've gotten a better understanding of the Mughal Empire and the power of human nature to change history.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.
Bye, everyone.